My name's Dave Dubeau, founder of MoneyPartnerFormula.com, and this show is built for everyday real estate investors who are actively doing deals and looking to scale using other people's money. So if you're an active real estate investor and you want to get featured on this show to talk about your own real estate and capital raising experiences, then just go to daveinterviewsyou.com. Now let's get rolling with this episode, and remember to subscribe for daily interview content. Welcome back, gang. Today, my special guest zooming in from Utah, about an hour outside of Salt Lake City, is a very, very experienced real estate investor and entrepreneur and cash flow lover. This guy is all about creating passive income. And we're going to be talking today about a very interesting topic. And Chris Miles is going to explain how you can get your real estate to pay you twice. How to get your real estate to pay you twice. Sounds cool to me. So Chris, welcome to the show. Great to have you.
Yeah, same here, Dave. Man, cash flow lover. I haven't heard that one before. That makes it sound so provocative, doesn't it?
Well, we try to spice things up every once in a while, Chris.
No kidding. I should tell that to my wife sometime. Like, I'm a cash flow lover, baby. You know?
Well, hey, there's truth. There's truth in that. So tell us a little bit about what does real estate investing look like for you these days? We're recording this, get towards the middle of 2025. And then let's dig into this whole how we can get our real estate investments to pay us twice.
Yeah, although I used to be like in the fix and flip world, 2007 was not my friend, as it wasn't for a lot of us, right?
A lot of folks, yeah.
So, and that's the ironic thing. I was a financial advisor, started doing that, learned that real estate investors actually were financially free, not financial advisors, nor were any of their clients. So I went that path.
Yeah.
But after being an active investor, even did a little bit of unofficial wholesaling that I did a little bit too. I got burned in the recession. So when I came back scared a little bit, but finally by the mid 2010s, I came back more to do more like hands-off passive, like truly passive investing, where I was investing with you guys instead. I was investing with the real estate investors, whether I was lending them money, whether I was partnering on deals, or I was just buying my own rentals, but somebody else managed the property for me, like turnkey rentals. I even have a raw land partnership that we have where they're buying and selling raw land and doing it on note terms and everything. And I'm getting paid on that. So, I mean, there's all kinds of stuff, but now I'm more the financer versus the guy that's actually actively doing the investing.
Okay, well, cool. That is very, very passive. So let's talk a little bit about how you help your clients, especially real estate investor clients, get paid twice from their real estate investment. So what is that? Speaking of provocative, that's a good title there. So explain it to us. What does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, we're always about leverage, aren't we? We always want to get our money to work harder for us, so we have to work so hard for that money. And so when we're talking about getting your money to pay twice, like how cool it'd be if you could have your money in two places at once, right? Not only doing investments, but maybe it could be earning interest somewhere else. And I always tell people this, like you can typically do this with a bank account, right? Where if you go into your local bank, you got money sitting in savings, you could borrow the money from the bank, let your money just sit there. They'll pay you interest on that money, and then go and lend that and go do that as a down payment or whatever on a deal that you're doing in real estate. Yeah, you still earn interest. You're making money on the real estate deal, making money in two places at once. The only issue is, however, is that they will charge you interest, and they're going to charge you significantly more interest than what you're being paid by the bank.
Yeah,
so you're going to say,
because
well,
they pay you nothing on your savings account, but they charge you a heck of a lot, especially a line of credit or something like that, a loan to purchase something.
Yeah. And in fact, you can always try it. Like go into your bank, say, can I do a secured line of credit using my cash in my savings account as collateral? And they'll say yes, but they'll make you pay it back monthly, even if you're not making money on the deal yet, right? Those stuff to pay money back, just like you would on a HELOC. Well, that's cool and all. But the great thing is with infinite banking, right? If you've ever heard using whole life insurance specifically, where there you can actually borrow the money, but it's roughly about the same interest rate as what you're being paid. And the great thing is they're paying you with compounding interest because your money compounds and grows. You're not pulling your own money out, although you could do that. The cool thing is as investors is we can borrow the money from the insurance company, from the cash that we have, right? The cash that's in that savings account, there's a tax-free savings account you have in there. They're paying you compounding interest about 6% a year, but they're charging you roughly about the same interest rate. But when you pay it back with the returns you're getting on the real estate deal, you're paying back with simple interest. So for example, let's just say that, using easy numbers, because I like to use easy math, right?
Me too, man.
Say that you want to use, you have $100,000, you're doing into a deal, and say it's going to pay you $1,000 a month. Well, if you take the 1,000 a month and start paying it back towards that line of credit, what happens is that just like you would with the bank line of credit, right? Same thing. As you pay down that bank line of credit, it frees up the cash in your savings account to then use either to withdraw or to use again to go do that same line of credit. You can do the same thing with an insurance company, but here's the benefit. One, I mentioned the interest rate's better. They're paying you a lot more money and they charge you less. Two, it's tax free, the money that they're paying you, which is always cool, right? We don't like paying taxes, so we like that. Three, this is a big benefit if you're a real estate investor. And the third thing is, you not only do you not pay taxes, but you also get to write off the interest. Because if it's used for business purposes, you write off the interest as well. So it's almost like you actually get paid kind of three ways in that sense. The fourth thing, of course, is that again, there's no monthly payment on this thing, right? You could pay it back however, whenever you want. The deadline is your death. So that's when the balloon payment is due, is on your death. And they just take that out of the death benefit, pay the rest of your family or your heirs, tax free. So
Okay, well, let's
more
back up
flexibility.
for a second here, Chris, and let's
Yeah.
assume that some of the folks watching or listening to this are not at all familiar with infinite
Mhm.
banking.
Yeah.
So zoom out, give us the Dum Dum Dave grade 5 level explanation of how infinite banking works. All right?
The dumb dumb Dave level. I like that.
Yeah.
That's catchy.
Don't like it too much, man.
That's right. I'm not
I
going to
can
take it
call
from you.
Dave Dum Dum. Don't you call Dave Dum Dum.
That's right. So here's what it is. Like everybody knows about term life insurance, right? It's death insurance. It's not even life insurance. It's death insurance. There's another kind of life insurance that's permanent called whole life insurance. Now, the reason that guys like Dave Ramsey, another Dave, right? That one is dumb sometimes, but that Dave Ramsey, he always tells you that don't ever buy permanent life insurance. It's a ripoff. You'll pay too much for it. And then in truth, there actually is some truth to that. He's kind of right because there are a lot of whole life insurance agents out there that sell you very expensive policies. I know this firsthand because in 2006, when I was starting to get into real estate world and doing this, all these guys were talking about infinite banking. I had never heard of it before, even though I was a financial advisor for 4 years, never heard the term. And they're telling me, oh yeah, you use whole life insurance because it's not just a death benefit. You have this tax-free, high-yield savings account that you can use to invest and do things. I'm like, okay. And they would always tell me like buy cars with it, all that kind of stuff. Which, by the way, I recommend not buying houses and cars with it by replacing the bank in that way. And I'll tell you why in a minute. But anyways, they're saying like, yeah, you can just basically borrow from yourself and then pay yourself back interest. Both those things were false, right?
Hmm.
They taught me that, and I bought it hook, line, and sinker. I drank the little Kool-Aid. However, when the recession hit, I couldn't afford to keep paying the premiums, and I lost that policy. I paid 25 grand into that policy, but because of all those expensive fees that Dave Ramsey is right about,
Mhm.
if you don't design it the right way, I end up just losing it all. So it was like the biggest ripoff. I
Wow.
found out months later I could have designed it better, right? And by the way, I had actually had an insurance license even when I bought it, but I didn't know how to use it, so I had somebody else that I trusted to do it for me.
So what had happened in that case, Chris, is you got hit by the recession, your
Mhm.
income shrunk, you weren't able
Cash
to
flow was
make
tight.
you weren't able to make those premium payments, and then they just absconded with all your
Yeah,
money.
exactly. Yeah. Well, if you just
Mm.
like normal term insurance, if you don't make a payment, they cancel it on you, right? Well, whole life in the traditional way, those first few years, all the costs are loaded up front. It's front
Mm.
loaded, right? And then it gets cheaper over time. Well, those first few years, of course, the recession hits me pretty hard. I'm in the whole 16,000 a month. I can't keep paying $1,000 a month,
Yeah,
right? Because I'm trying to I'm just trying to avoid bankruptcy.
right.
And so I pumped all this money into that policy, but there was nothing to show for it. So when I asked the company, the insurance company, I said, well, is there any way I can get out of it? They said, well, no, you can just cancel it. Like, well, that sucks. I just put all this money into it and I have nothing to show for it. But I
Yeah.
figured, oh, well, that's just what it is. Because I asked my friend, I said, aren't there ways to make this better? And he said, no. He says, you
Mm.
can't make this any better than what it is. He lied. He flat out lied. And there are guys, even to this day, even though they're not as bad as what he did to me, there are guys out there to say, "Oh yeah, like this is the perfect blend or whatever," right? And they'll charge you double the fees. And this is the one thing that most people don't know, real estate investors especially. And there's guys in the real estate space right now preying on you currently. I mean, if I'm going to be so bold, this is why I got pissed off. By the way, I would use these guys for myself and for my own clients if I could trust them. But I
Mhm.
couldn't find anybody to do it that I could trust, which is why we even brought it in house in our own company. Because these guys will say, oh, yeah, we'll give you the best deal. But then I know the truth. because I have an insurance license. I can play with my own numbers, right? And I realized I'm like, man, a lot of these guys that are in the real estate space are charging double the fees on these policies that you don't need to be paying. Literally,
Wow.
there's no reason to pay them. They say it's better, but that's only because they get paid more, right?
Right.
So that's the big thing that really pissed me off, and that's kind of why I've kind of came out to say, you know what, we got to fix this. If anything, got to change this industry because, there are ways. Like for example, those like I mentioned, those first few years, I paid in $1,000 a month. I paid in really in going to that third year about 25 grand.
Yeah.
Zero was in that tax-free savings account.
All
That same
fees.
scenario, even though there's front-loaded costs in the beginning, in those first few years, there's a net cost to it, and then there's a net gain after thereafter. That same scenario, you would have about 20,000 plus dollars. You probably have about 21, 22,000 bucks in that third year or whatever. So instead of having zero, I would save you roughly about 20 grand plus in fees, right?
Right.
But the reason that insurance agents won't do it is it cuts their commissions.
Yeah. They don't, the fees is how they get paid.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if
Okay.
I have more
So,
cash,
so
then I have more money
knowing
to
what you
invest.
know now,
Mhm.
that scenario you went through previously where you lost 25 grand, if somebody were involved in some sort of a infinite banking type situation, working with you, let's say,
Mhm.
and they did come up with something similar, a similar challenge where they weren't able to be making that $1,000 a month payment anymore, what
Mm.
would happen?
Yeah, the cool thing is because there's cash in there, assuming you didn't just pull it all out and just start investing all of it, right?
Mm,
But if you have cash in there, that cash can actually literally be used to pull out and then pay back in. And so I've had people that literally, like after they paid that first year's premium, they paid it in, and then they said, "Hey, that second year, like real estate's been tough, or my multifamily haven't been paying out very well." Or like, what can I do? Well, one,
mm,
when I set it up for people, we do it a little bit differently. Most insurance people talk about a death benefit, right? Like, here's what's going to cost you for this death benefit. We're like, screw the death benefit, right? Because that's the thing that is costing you all the money. How can we get the death benefit as low as we can based on the amount of money you want to contribute each year? And so we try to figure that out, right? So if somebody says, I want to put in 25 grand a year, great. But that's not what's actually required. The requirement might only be like 5 grand a year.
for the death
So
benefit. Yeah.
yeah, so that's the thing is the insurance company doesn't care about the 25 grand because that extra 20 grand you're paying in just builds up your cash faster. They only
Mm,
care about the 5 grand. So I tell them worst case scenario, even if you can't pay the 25 grand a year, pay at least five. You can pay anything between
mm,
5 and 25. They're like, well, what about the worst case, Chris? What if I can't even pay the five? Great. Do you have at least 5 grand in cash? Yeah. Use that money to then pay your premium. And so I had a guy that just yesterday before we recorded this, he had emailed me. He's like, "Hey, remind me again how this all works. It's been a few years. I've been paying money into this, but I don't want to pay into this forever." Well, I said that's good. You don't have to because the minimum that years you have to pay in is 7 years. That's it. So you don't have to pay in for your entire life like most people teach you have to. I did tell him though, I was like, but most people will because if they know if they put in $1 and then $3 comes out, they're probably going to keep putting in that dollar, right? Um,
okay. Well, so again, for folks that aren't familiar with this, and I know
mhm.
you're knee deep in all of this, so it
Yeah.
makes complete sense to you. But again, walk me through how it works. So you've explained the difference between whole life and term life.
Mhm.
You kind of explained some of the pitfalls of doing this with people that are unscrupulous and how you got screwed over with your own whole life plan years and years ago.
Yeah.
What you're doing a little bit differently now. So and that you can have lower death benefits and all that stuff. But again, if and I do know a little bit about this, but for folks that don't know anything about this, they're still going to be confused. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
so I've got a term life policy right now for 500 grand or whatever if I get hit by a
Mhm.
bus. How does this take the place of that? How does this help me? What, if you're telling me I don't need a $500,000 death benefit, maybe I could need something lower and it's 5 grand a year. What does that all actually look like? And what's the end benefit for the user?
Yeah, and remember this too. Like, even if they were paying in 25 grand a year, it might have a death benefit close to or even above a $500,000, depending on your age and everything.
At the end, yeah, if you pay into it for X number of years, right?
Yeah. I
Yeah.
always tell people the icing on the cake is you get a death benefit too, right? Like,
Hmm.
it's kind of better than doing buy term and invest the difference because term, according to Tom Wheelwright, who's the CPA for the Rich
Yeah.
Dad Poor Dad books. So all your Kiyosaki fans out there, right? He'll say this. He's like, term life insurance is an expense. Whole life insurance is an asset. because you
Mhm.
still get the death benefit, but you also got this liquid tax-free savings account that you can use for anything at any time for whatever reason, right?
Okay.
So
Well,
that's a
well, maybe let's try it. Let's do
big
it
difference.
differently then, Chris. Let's just
Yeah.
walk through a scenario
Hmm.
where I'm a brand new client of yours
Hmm.
and I'm a real estate investor. And how would you walk me through how to set this up? Let's say if I want to have access to $100,000
Hmm.
at some point. So what would that kind of look like? I'm not going to hold you to any exact numbers, but
Yeah.
give or take, how much would I be paying in? How long before I could actually start using this? Walk me through how it would work.
Well, like I said, we always reverse engineer it, right? So
Yeah.
whatever money you're willing to put away per year, we set it up to do that. Now,
Okay.
just like
So let's keep it simple.
yeah,
So let's say the person put away $1,000 comfortably $1,000 a month.
uh-huh.
What can they do with that?
Yeah, so that $1,000 a month, I mean, that first year, which is the most expensive year, there might be roughly 2 or 3 grand that comes out in costs. And then all
Okay.
the rest of the money, that 9, 10 grand, is there for you to use whenever from day one,
Well, from
if
day
it's
one.
done
So you can
right.
actually act, not can't do much
Yeah.
with it, but
Yeah.
but you have access to that. So
Yeah.
realistically, with all the clients that you've worked with over the years, what's kind of the typical scenario that you're seeing people doing?
Yeah. Here's a scenario I'd recommend versus what I hear people being recommended to do
Okay, well, what do you
in
recommend?
real
What's
estate
the
space.
scenario? Yeah.
So first and foremost, I recommend this is use your emergency fund first to start funding the first few years of the policy where there's a net cost, right? And the reason I say that is it's just like when you move money over from your crappy bank account to a high yield savings account. You can do the same thing here, but know this. In most states in the United States, right? Assuming you're in the US,
Mhm.
this money is 100% protected from lawsuits and creditors. This is one thing I shared with Brian Pineda because he had had lots of guests on here. He's like, wait a minute, you say I can have millions of dollars stored in here and nobody can get to it? I'm like, that's exactly it. It's one of the only places you can store cash that no one can get to it, even if they sue you and win.
Wow.
He's like, why didn't anybody else tell me this? He's like, I've always been an enemy of this thing. For that reason alone, I would do it. And that's what I see a lot of real estate investors doing. Someone will literally store millions of dollars in here, but I don't recommend people dump in millions of dollars up front. That's the difference. Because there are some real estate investors or people that work with real estate investors in this space will say, dump in a bunch of money, right? Just front load it all. But remember, the more you dump in, the higher the death benefit and the higher the costs have to be. The only person that gets paid more money is the insurance agent, not you.
Hmm.
So, like you said, if I'm doing $1,000 a month, great. Just use your emergency fund to start moving over there, right? Because that first year we might have about 10,000 bucks. Second year you pay 12,000 in, right? $1,000 a month. You'll probably have about 21,000 or so dollars. That third year, though, when you move over, you put in 12,000 bucks, you're probably going to see you have roughly about 32, oh, no, sorry, $33,000, right? Now it starts making more than what you're putting in because
Hmm.
the interest you're earning, that tax-free interest, is now outpacing the cost of the insurance. So it starts actually growing by more than what you're paying in. Usually by the fifth
It's
year, if you've paid in
30, 30.
12,000 a year, you'll have about 60 grand or so in that account already. And
Mhm.
so I tell people use your emergency fund at first because in the case of emergency, it takes you about a week to access that cash. You can get the money out whenever you need it. But at least now move it over someplace where it's protected from taxes, from lawsuits and creditors,
So
and
the
start
first
putting in.
year you're saying front load it with your emergency fund of the full 12,000 right up front?
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Yeah.
In fact, you can actually save costs if you pay once per year versus monthly. Yeah, you'll do little things to save costs and things that we will work out to see how you get the best ROI to milk every
Mhm.
dollar you can out of it. Yeah, you definitely do that. But yeah, that's a good example. It's like just move it over. And if you're already saving money anyways, you're going to keep building up your savings account or use it to invest or whatever. This is
Yeah,
the one thing I
because
tell people not
because
to
if I
do.
understand correctly, what you're
Mhm.
saying, Chris, is move your put your emergency fund in there,
Yeah,
and then if emergency comes up, you could still access
yep,
9 grand out of the 12 grand or whatever for the
exactly.
emergency if you need to. Is that
Exactly.
correct? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. So you get access to the cash just like you would think of like an online savings account that you'd have to go and request the money and transfer to your bank. Same kind of thing you'd have to do here too.
Hmm.
So just be aware that it does have a separation for you from that standpoint. But again, it's liquid. It's available to use. If you ever try to get loans, if you go to a bank, you have to prove that you've got some sort of cash reserves. I literally just send them my statement for my insurance. Say, here you go, and they count it. It actually counts as liquid reserves. A 401k and IRA, those don't count, right? Equity
Hmm.
and real estate, they don't give a crap about that. They care about what's liquid on hand. this counts as one of those things.
Nice.
The other thing's kind of cool too. Like I said, it doesn't count as in case of lawsuits. The one thing that does help though is that if you ever have kids, right? Assuming you have kids, right? I've got six teenagers right now. I got one in his 20s, got six teenagers, and then a 9-year-old. We have 8 kids of a
Wow.
blended family. So all these teenagers, they ever want to get, financial aid from a college, naturally people say, oh, if I got too much assets, then, they don't get any aid. Well,
Mhm.
guess what? This does not count as an asset. Like I said, you could literally store millions of dollars in here. It doesn't count as an asset because they'll say, oh, it's a death benefit. It's not a real asset, even though it counts as an
Although you
asset
can
when you
still
get a
use, it doesn't
loan.
count as an asset, but you can use it as collateral.
Exactly. Yeah. And you can use bank collateral too. I'll talk about that one. That's a cool thing you can do as well because Walt Disney did the same thing. But yeah, anyways, I mean, so there's just so much you can do with it. That's the problem. I think the biggest problem with this strategy is that it's not just something you can make money in real estate in two places at once. It's the fact you can use it for so many different things. It's not like the 401k is only retirement. Like they make you little automatons in the government plans,
Yeah, yeah.
they're like only one thing, 529 plan, only college savings. Well, what if my kid gets a scholarship? And I got this money it's trapped in here that if I pull out, I'm going to get penalized for on my own money, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Well,
yeah.
I have more people saying, screw the college savings plans. I'm going to use this for my kids' college. And by the way, maybe I'm even going to buy real estate properties to then take the cash flow from those properties to use that to pay for my kids' college. Oh, and by the way, the cash doesn't count against me, so things
Nice.
like that, right? Here's one thing you can do that's really cool. Walt Disney did this because Walt Disney, just like any big entrepreneur or investor, he wanted to have cash capital to create this crazy thing called this idea called Disneyland, right? This
Mhm.
theme park with no alcohol, which now, by the way, has plenty of alcohol. But at the time, he's trying to create an alcohol-free, carnival fair type
Yeah,
place, right?
yeah. Family friendly, the whole
Yeah,
thing. Yeah.
family-friendly amusement park. Well, nobody wanted to give him the money for it. So what he did, he found ABC. ABC was kind of struggling. They were like the little baby network compared to NBC and CBS, right? He went to ABC and they said, "Listen, we'll give you the money if you put up more cash." So he sold off his vacation home, and he took a lien. He took a loan against the cash that was inside of his whole life policy, and that's in all of his documentaries. And so he used that money as collateral for them to give him the loan. And so that's how he was able to create the happiest place on earth, where you wait in line for an hour and a half, right?
Nice.
But it's not just that. I mean, I had a guy that was a doctor that he wanted to buy his own practice, wanted to buy his own real estate commercial building.
Mhm.
And so he said, well, I want to do that. Maybe I should just cash out this policy I have that I got set up with years ago. And just cash it out, cancel all the insurance, just take the cash out and buy it in cash outright. I said, well, before you do that, why don't you go ask the bank if they'll actually use this as extra collateral? Because he got the building, but he wanted to do some extra build out and stuff that was more than the value of the property. It's like, why don't you use this as extra collateral and see what they do? Well, they gave him a loan that was about 2.5% less than the going rate for a commercial property. So he got this dirt cheap interest rate, almost 0%.
Mhm.
And the cool thing is they gave him for the build out and everything. Year and a half later, he gets a renter in there. He's paying for his mortgage, his tiny little mortgage payment and everything. Well, he goes to the bank and says, "Hey, can I take the lien off my life insurance now?" Because they locked up that life insurance there. They said, "Yeah, you got plenty of value in the building. We'll take the lien off." He now has that 300 grand to use for whatever to invest in the next project.
Nice.
So
Nice.
there's just
Nice.
a lot of different ways to use it. The biggest thing is, again, it gives you that capital that you need, especially when really that this in real estate, the person that wins, the person that has the most cash, right? The people that
Exactly.
fail in real estate are the ones that get overly crazy. They try to put all their chips in, and then like in 2022, we saw lots of young kids do this, and then they all went bankrupt because they didn't have any capital on hand. My friends that did do awesome because they usually had a few more gray hairs and more experience that knew they had to have cash on hand. They did this very same thing, saying, "I got to keep capital on the side. Let's put it somewhere better than the bank. And then if I need to get to it, I can get to it and use that for my deals." And that's the big thing is cash is king, and you become king when you've got the cash.
Chris, this is a lot of fun, but we got to wrap things up. So if people want to connect with you, maybe book an appointment, talk more about how this could work for their own particular situation, or just get some more information about infinite banking, where should they go?
Best place is just look up money ripples, right? Not nipples, ripples, money ripples, moneyripples.com, at money ripples on social media, or even our money ripples podcast we have as well. If you like podcasts, you can follow ours too.
Awesome. Thanks for being on the show again, my friend. Good to see you.
That's such a pleasure, Dave. Thanks.
All right, everybody, take care, and we'll see you on the next one. Hey there, I really hope you enjoyed that episode. And as always, if you want to listen to more daily interview content, make sure you subscribe. And if you're an active real estate investor and you're doing deals and you'd like to get featured on this show, then just head over to daveinterviewsyou.com.